Hey, what up? This is Zach Guilford from Midnight Mass, and you're listening to one of my favorite podcasts, Pop Culture Pastor.
Pop Culture Pastor.
So, Cody, it's been 23 years since the music landscape was changed forever.
The hierarchy of music.
The hierarchy of music will change forever, and it was The Rock. Can you smell what The Rock is deucing? No. 23 years ago, Alien Ant Farm released their cover of Smooth Criminal.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, you feel old, don't you?
So my wife and I have a ferocious debate over this
Okay.
because she's a huge fan of the original.
Yeah, I mean, it's Michael Jackson. It's good.
And I'm like, this might be a better version. Just because I think that the subject matter plays better with this style of music.
It's hard to say with someone as iconic as Michael Jackson, but I'm inclined to maybe agree with that because you're not just talking about one of the best covers ever. You're talking about one of the best covers ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not just one of the best covers ever, but one of the best remake into like a new genre. Like there's one of the best one-hit wonders. There's so many umbrellas that this would fall under because Alien Ant Farm, I mean, we need a Where Are They Now? Because I have no idea.
I didn't even know that's what they looked like. I had forgotten.
Okay, I feel like this is right up my alley. Actually, I think they are making some new music right now. I think I just watched something new in the last month.
This is why Justin is a geek of the round table.
Yes. Okay, dude, that cover is phenomenal. Also, the video, out of this world. I think it's the genre thing. The fact that he just absolutely kills it, and none of us are like, leave it to Michael Jackson. No, like, him and the whole band just nail it. It is incredible.
Michael Jackson's very coverable, in my opinion. There is a cover of, is it Human Nature? No, that's not the one I'm thinking of. Man in the Mirror. Well, first of all, there's thousands of covers of Man in the Mirror, probably. But there is a specific cover of Man in the Mirror by a guy that I don't think is a big deal. Some people may have heard of him or follow him. I don't know, but I know he's not huge. And if you give me a minute to look it up, I'll tell you who it is. It's James Morrison.
Yeah.
Do you know him?
Know of him, yeah.
He does an acoustic cover of Man in the Mirror, and it's fantastic. The Civil Wars did that live cover of Billie Jean. That's amazing.
Oh.
Totally.
Before they ended in Civil War.
Before they imploded, right, yeah. But it's the Civil Wars were like the biggest thing on the planet for like 8 months.
Yeah, they even did a song with Taylor Swift.
Did they?
For the first Hunger Games movie.
That is like a testament to how long Taylor Swift's been around, because that feels like ages ago
Yeah.
when the Civil Wars were something.
Speaking of Taylor Swift, there's this new picture that's going around on Instagram that says, how does Taylor even that popular? She never even had a song on Tony Hawk Pro Skater. And you know who did? Alien Ant Farm.
No.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure Alien Ant Farm had a song on one of the Madden years. Remember there was a year of Madden on like PlayStation 2 or whatever it was where it was all like that new age punk sound, like Blink 182 songs. And who is the other guy? Benji Madden.
Oh, Good Charlotte.
Yeah, Good Charlotte. There was a Good Charlotte song on it, and that was like all the music on it was like this kind of new. I don't even know if I'm categorizing that right.
Probably not.
Probably not. Let's new age punk.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a music head.
Ska.
Very, very punk.
Definitely not ska. Although, if Madden came out with just a soundtrack of all our old ska favorites,
my
like
land.
Real Big Fish, the Boss Tones,
Sign me up.
Let's Go Bowling, yeah, totally would buy it just for that. So,
100%.
Hi. That was a nice 4.5 minute intro. That was perfect.
That's what we strive for.
That was a perfect little short conversation and intro for the podcast you are listening to, which is this Pop Culture Pastor.
The podcast.
The podcast, like Spaceballs.
Yes.
It's my dream to have Pop Culture Pastor the toilet paper. My name's Dave. Cody's here.
I am.
And Geek of the Round Table, Justin John joins us
Hey,
for this
everybody.
episode. Whew, we got a fun one. We got a pop culture draft coming up in this episode later on, so stick around.
Taking all the JoJo Siwa
Oh my!
Taking all the what? Huh?
All of it?
Wait,
for
what?
the draft.
Yeah, but that doesn't even fit into the category.
YOLO.
I don't. Can we? What's going on with her, by the way? Is
She's so edgy.
Is she having a meltdown? Like, is she?
She's just trying to sell an album.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Because she
think
doesn't
she's
seem
struggling.
healthy.
She's struggling to stay popular.
I think she is trying to be dark and edgy, but she was so rainbow and bright that it was going to be next to impossible to pull that off. And she really is struggling with that.
I don't understand like the whole image thing, anyways. Because why wouldn't you just do what people like you to do? Unless you're a true artist, which I mean, I'm assuming JoJo Siwa is not a true artist when it comes to singing. Now, by all accounts, she's an amazing dancer. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't she just continue to do what people have liked and been fans of her for?
She's trying to grow, Dave.
She's growing all right, growing into a Kiss, denizen. That's all I can think of is like she looks like she's an extra on a Las Vegas review of the band Kiss.
Which, Scotty, we apologize for.
No, we
the
do
Kiss
not.
slander.
No, that is not Kiss slander. Scotty, Kiss is objectively terrible.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I will not relent on the last episode and just that Kiss is not good.
I'm still questioning if Moby was good. I'm still questioning.
Seriously?
It. I am so confused.
We did get several comments on our last episode that, man, you guys were really good going after it. And I said, yeah, I felt really bad after we got done recording. Did you feel bad after we got done recording?
There was a couple while we were recording, but then I'm like, they had it coming.
Sometimes I get in this super judgy mode where, especially with pop culture stuff, and I go hard. And then I kind of black out for a little while. And then when I wake up, I'm like, did I go too hard? And that's how I felt after we recorded last week. So if I specifically, really hammered on something you like, I will remind you that pop culture fandom, things we like, it's all subjective, not objective. Usually. Kiss is definitely objectively bad. But if you like Kiss, more power to you. We should say that David Allen won we had a little impromptu contest based on a couple pod episodes ago. We talked about a legendary picture of a young Cody.
Yes.
With cousins?
I remember that.
My cousin and my sister and Andre Brower.
Yeah, and in the background on the very old television was Andre Brower of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but this wasn't the show that was on the screen because this was clearly taken long before Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, yeah. I was a Ute.
And we asked if someone could identify the show that it was based on just the screenshot photo. It wasn't. We didn't have screenshots back then.
We didn't. There was a weird photo.
But there's a photo. There's obviously a TV on in the background, and Andre Brower's face was on it. Looks like it's right behind Cody.
So did they figure out what show it was from?
He did. It was like a Law and Order show, right?
So it was a show that crossed over with Law and Order one episode, but it was Homicide, Life in the Streets.
Life in the Streets, loosely based on my upbringing.
How did he find that? That is such a strange title.
I would have to think your parents must have watched it. Like, I imagine my mom or stepdad would have nailed that.
Jackson knew. He didn't see it till a couple hours after, and he's like, "Oh, that's Homicide: Life on the Street."
What in the
but
world?
He is a Law and Order guy, so that was in the same vein. If you watched Law and Order, you probably watched Homicide.
You
Life
made it
on the
sound
Street.
like the aging veteran in the police department who's like by the book. He's a Law and Order guy.
Yeah, he is.
He's by the book. We don't break the rules. We don't make them. We don't break them.
That's a total parent move, man. Law and Order, Columbo, all that nonsense. Like,
Columbo.
Matlock.
I mean, gosh, you started off with something in like the 90s and aughts, and then you were like Columbo.
that's what I was forced to watch.
With no Kojak?
No Kojak. Sorry.
Magnum PI.
Shocking
There you go.
Telly Savalas slander.
Vice.
Okay, I got a couple news items here. Maybe short news items.
Okay.
We're on a Chris Hemsworth run here.
Am I going to have to rage against him again?
I don't think so. Not this time.
Okay.
I think we're going to be with him pretty fully on this. But he's been, of course, we've been talking about him because he's on these press tours for Furiosa, which apparently is pretty good.
I'm excited to watch it this coming weekend.
Yeah.
IGN gave it 10 out of 10.
He did a thing with Variety here, and he expressed frustration. Oh, no, Variety's just reporting it. It was an interview at the Times of London. And he made some comments over Marvel criticisms made by some directors he considers to be personal heroes, specifically our friend Marty Scorsese.
Not Marty.
And Francis Ford Coppola. Hemsworth said this, quote, "It felt harsh and it bothers me, especially from some of my heroes. It was an eye roll for me." People bashing the superhero space. Those guys had films that didn't work too. We all have. When they talked about what was wrong with superheroes, I thought, cool, tell that to the billions who watched them. Were they all wrong? Bam!
So technically, there's a commercial. Can like 50 million seniors be wrong? Theoretically, yes. So could the billions be wrong? Theoretically, yes.
But they're not.
I think I'm actually going to side with Marty and Francis on this.
I really hate Contrarian Cody. Contrarian Cody comes out at the weirdest times.
Is that just like the DC monster?
He just can't help himself. He's like Bizarro Superman.
So I think if you are okay, so these guys are. We'll switch for a different analogy. These guys are like the Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson of their genre of making films.
Debatable, but okay.
I think it's feasible that they're
all right.
those people. I think that their opinions carry weight because they have been in the industry. Now, can their opinions also be jaded or casting shade? Yeah, throwing shade. Yeah, definitely. But I think that there's validity in them saying something that like, oh, this isn't the best art form. It's like when Andy Warhol made tomato soup cans. It's not Picasso. He just made cans and put them in different colors.
See, I disagree with
and millions of people bought them.
I disagree with your metaphor.
Okay.
See, if Marty Scorsese's anybody, he's Russell Westbrook. He's like, he's like no doubt a great basketball player.
Marty's won stuff,
but he's no doubt a great basketball player. But he's like, I'm going to do it my way. And then there's Michael Jordan, who just wins. He just wins championships.
That's not entirely true.
Michael Jordan's Marvel.
Scottie Pippen, Jordan won Jack Diddley squat. Post Scottie Pippen, he also won Jack Diddley squat. And he got ran out of the gymnasium in 95.
I mean, he was like 88 by that time.
So my point is, I think the Marty comparison was spot on.
Also, it's super misleading to pretend that Scottie Pippen was the difference.
Phil Jackson arriving with the triangle offense.
Let's talk about what Scottie Pippen did without Michael.
Both were atrocious towards the end. I was there.
I love that Hemsworth, even though he has reverence for these guys, stuck up for the movies that obviously tons of people love.
Okay, so I'll tell you the motive behind Contrarian Cody coming out.
You think Chris Hemsworth is just being a Marvel honk?
I think he's just toting the line so he can keep getting some money. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, why are you going out as you are in a movie that is in a completely different franchise, not connected to anything superhero related? Like, Talk about Furiosa or Mad Max. As a former Australian dude was Mad Max.
Because he's Thor. I mean, he'll forever be linked with that role.
I'm just saying, you could talk about Mad Max or Furiosa. I'm good with either or.
All right. This second news item, we're just going to talk about the headline. I'm not even going to read the article.
Okay.
Because the headline is intriguing enough and has a big problem in it for me. Are you aware that Kevin Costner's new Western Horizon got a 7-minute can standing ovation?
No.
Have you seen this?
No,
Are you aware of this? Now, first of all,
No idea.
There was Kevin Costner slander last week.
I think tons of things get standing ovations at Cannes that end up not being that great.
Oh, it's rude not to stand.
But 7 minutes is weird. Like, there's this weird thing that happens at Cannes where, like, they just keep standing up and applauding.
I would
for
be sitting
minutes?
down. I'm lazy.
I mean, gosh, I'm Pentecostal,
Nah.
and we stand up and worship. And after a few minutes, I'm like, I'm really tired.
We stand up to read the scripture.
I'm just gonna read you the headline, and then I'm gonna tell you my problem. This is the headline in Variety. Kevin Costner can't hold back tears as his Western epic Horizon earns 7-minute can standing ovation, comma, promises 3 more installments. Now, see, this is the problem when we encourage people. It's like Motley Crue. Like, if we encourage them, oh, great, they're going to do 3 triple live albums now. Do we really want that?
Do you think it's because he saw the success of Yellowstone and the prequels and sequels and all that spun off from it and was like, America still wants Westerns. And who can give it to them? Not Chris Hemsworth. I'll cast myself. Which is the thing.
No kidding.
Oh, side question. Is the Mad Max saga Australian Western?
Possibly.
Futuristic Australian
Yeah.
Western, yeah.
But I think at the root of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Western.
I never thought of that before, but I just made that connection in my
Nice.
head. Listen, I want to see this movie, and I hope it's good. I'm just having some fun at Kevin Costner's expense. And I do think people like Westerns.
I do think Westerns are coming back in a slight fashion. I don't know if there's many tales that I'm like, you know what? I need 4 quality movies for this to play out in.
Right. Yeah. That's what why I wanted to talk about that headline, because I'm like, oh, Kev.
That just kind of seems like the world today, though.
Like
it's like you get one good thing going, and you're like, I could do 3 more of these.
Was Kevin Costner, has he been like blacklisted from Hollywood or something? No, he's been working pretty solidly. Why is he so overcome with emotion like that? Oh, you love me. You really love me. Like, oh, Kevin Costner, everyone's loved you forever.
Maybe he thought he was washed up.
Ooh, yeah. But, Yellowstone reinvigorated him. I don't know. I just never saw him as washed up, I guess. And making a Western is a very Kevin Costner thing. Like, that's very Kevin Costner-y.
Just wait for the romance to play out in this Western.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be there.
Hard pass.
I am sure it'll be there. So that's the end of our news. Maybe some episode we'll tackle Anthony Kiedis of the Red Hot Chili Peppers and his new girlfriend, but I don't have the energy to do it
goodness.
today. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, you have no idea what I'm talking about?
I don't.
No, but
Well, I'm not going to say it because it's weird.
Like that
It's
music
it's
news, though.
the age gap is something. And normally, me, I don't really have a problem with age gaps most of the time, but this one is like, you can't see me, but my hands are in a praying motion in front of my face because I'm like, oh boy.
Oh, Antoine.
Yeah. All right. It's time for our main subject of this episode, the pop culture draft. We'll be right back. Okay. So we're back, and we wanted to do a pop culture draft, and we thought, what is something relevant with things going on right now? And in the news, just this past week, they announced a Peter Jackson-driven prequel in the Lord of the Rings world based on The Hunt for Gollum.
And also Furiosa comes out, which is a prequel.
You're right.
Yeah, Furiosa is set to come out, and we thought, actually, Cody, this was Cody's idea. I'll give you credit. What if we did a pop culture draft on prequels, and then the next week we went right into a review of Furiosa?
This is the thing.
Which is going to be good, because I've only seen Mad Max, the remake of Mad Max once, so I'm going to have to go back and rewatch that to kind of, refresh
I feel
my
like
memory.
I should binge watch all Mad Max movies.
That sounds fun. I don't know if I have it in me. I don't know that those old ones hold up.
Probably not, but
Yeah.
They were weird in the 80s. I loved Mad Max, but they were weird even by 80s standards. And Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, I remember watching that as a kid and thinking, I have no idea what's going on here, but I love it. I just love Tina Turner's there.
Freaking me out.
She's singing a cool song. I'm excited about it because it apparently is getting good reviews so far.
Yeah.
So we thought we would do a pop culture draft, and of course, it's just like me to not. I'm not prepared. So, well, what's your history with prequels, Justin? Did you have to do some studying, or did you know exactly where we were going?
Man, I love prequels. I had some that instantly came to mind, but I did have to do research. And I think sometimes what ends up happening is that you think of a prequel and it's like, yeah, I know that. But you're like, I also haven't watched that in like 10 years. I can't remember exactly what happened in that movie. But it's like, you remember some parts that you liked or some parts that, stuck with you at least. But no, I think prequels are fantastic. I as a individual crave knowing how things happen. So if you can take me back and invest in me and how this actually matters, I'm there. I'm there for all of it.
So I'm not going to lie. When the Zack Snyder cut finally got released of Justice League, there was one part that I thought was really cool, and it showed the gods and heroes of old. If you would make a series about this, I would be all in, because like the snippet was cool to see, but it's a story that you can imagine, and not many diehards are going to be like, well, this isn't accurate or whatever, because it's not a story that we're telling. And so it would be something new, and it would give credibility to that universe. But like when the Snyder Cut was finally released, it was, oh, this is dead. It's been dead for a little bit, and it's going to be dead for another 4 movies.
Yeah. I will admit, when you first promoted this idea, my initial thought was like, oh man, prequels are terrible though. It was just my initial snap judgment. But when I started digging and looking at all the prequels, I thought, oh wait, that was pretty good. Oh, that was pretty good. But they're good in a way of, especially if they're used to reboot, kind of restart an old franchise that has been dormant, they can be especially good and complex and like kickstart a new thing. So I found several that I actually liked and was reminded of all these things. So
Don't you dare steal mine.
there's nothing. It all comes down to, as usual, the order, and we're ready to spin.
I would say it's going to be the toughest part. I think there's not.
Yeah, because there's not a ton of them.
No.
So this is going to be interesting. We're gonna pick our top 3, and then we have 2 specialty categories that we'll tell you about later. So let's just get right to it and do the spinning. There you hear the spinner on my phone app.
I'm scared.
And the first pick. Oh no! It's me, Dave.
This is rigged.
Dave. It's rigged.
So I know my top one's gone.
I will hide slice and spin again. We'll
Should've
just get this
had
all
Cody.
figured out now. Second pick is Justin by a sliver.
This is the second straight draft I've been dead last.
There were only 2 pieces of that pie.
All righty. Well, I guess if I have to go first, this is what I will do. I am taking, with my first selection,
Don't you dare.
Indiana Jones.
Son of a gun.
And the Temple of Doom.
I knew you were going to do it.
Most people don't know that this is a prequel.
I knew, and that's why it was at the top of my list.
Spielberg and Lucas, they wanted it to not, the Nazis to not be the bad guy. So this technically takes place in 1935. So it takes place before the rise of the Third Reich. And we go to a completely different area of the world than a lot of the Indiana Jones adventures take place. Listen, this movie is somehow scarier and sillier than Raiders. Spielberg disowned. Did you know he disowned this movie 5 years after it came out?
Was it due to the racism? No.
We weren't thinking about that in the 80s.
Whoa. Let's calm down.
Justin's coming in hot.
Listen, Mr. Liberal. No. Like there is like some parts don't hold up real well. Oh. That is admittable, but I'm not going to judge an 80s movie and an 80s pulp movie. The Indiana Jones stories were based on these pulpy things. The tricky thing about Indiana Jones is that they couldn't figure out in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny is that it works better if it's based in some sort of realism, but also you understand that this is like an alternate reality version of Earth.
Yeah.
Like that it's not our world. And so I think it's meant to be seen through that light. And then so like when you go back and you watch it now, and especially our current era where we're very aware of things like that, it doesn't hold up real well. But I'm going to judge it by 80s standards. And I think this movie's actually better than Raiders. Spielberg said it was too dark and too horrific, which was the reason I kind of liked it. The minecart scene is iconic.
Yeah.
It also features a young Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, he's in it. So the minecart scene is iconic. Academy Award winner Ki Hai Kwan is Indy's best sidekick in all the movies. Kate Capshaw, I'm going to say it, she's better than Karen Allen. I like her character more than I like Karen Allen's character in Raiders. I find Temple of Doom to be superior to Raiders in almost every way, except for the MacGuffin. I don't think the MacGuffin is as impressive and is as intriguing as the Ark of the Covenant, obviously, and biblical artifacts. However, I think the bad guys are kind of scarier because they have this cultish quality. Roger Ebert said this about Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. It makes no apologies for being exactly what it is. Exhilarating, manic, wildly imaginative escapism. No apologies are necessary. He's apparently reacting to Spielberg because he didn't say this in his original review. No apologies are necessary. This is the most cheerfully exciting, bizarre, goofy, romantic adventure since Raiders. And it is high praise to say that it's not so much a sequel. It wasn't. He didn't understand it was a prequel. But he says it's an equal, which I would agree with. I think it's every bit as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I will stand by that. I didn't give you the stats on it. I should give you the stats because they're amazing. Came out May 8th, 1984, directed by Steven Spielberg. This movie cost, listen, if there's anything that hurts Dial of Destiny more, it's going to be the next things out of my mouth. This movie cost $28 million to make. Dial of Destiny, we don't even know, but it was over $300 million.
Goodness gracious.
De-aging Harry Ford takes a little bit.
It made $333 million at the box office, which in 1984 is just killer. That's just amazing. So, yeah, what do you guys think? Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That's my number one pick.
I think it's a solid first pick.
So, yeah, that was my number one if I was number one. I got robbed, but I got 3 other quality picks that I think aren't going to get picked that will put me over.
Okay. Well, I wasn't going to let that one sit. That was going to be my first pick if it was on the board. And obviously, when you get the first overall pick,
when you rig it, yeah, you're going to.
Totally rigged. Justin, what is your first pick?
All right. Side note on the whole Harrison Ford thing. Have I ever told you guys a story about how I ate supper 10 feet away from him? Legit.
I have heard this, yes.
Yeah, it was pretty great in Wichita. He was getting his airplane serviced and refueled. And the place we went to eat that evening was one of the 3 to 4 restaurants he deems worthy in Wichita.
I believe Justin sent me an awkward cell phone photo from that evening.
It was hard because you kind of wanted to act cool, but like at the same time still catch him at the bar.
He's like pretending to look at his phone but aiming it in awkward direction.
It was the only moment that I've gone up to like 15 other like grown men that I didn't know, and you were like, I'm secretly fanboying, and they're like, so am I. It was crazy. All right. Number 1 pick. I love this movie, and that's why I think I'm just going to go ahead and take it for the first one. A lot of people would go to the Star Wars realm and go for maybe like episode 1, 2, or 3, but I am going for a movie called Rogue One.
Nice.
As my number 1 pick.
Full name
in prequels.
Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Here, let me get the blurb out of the way for you.
Yes, please.
84% on Rotten Tomatoes. By the way, Temple of Doom was 77%.
Wow.
And that is just atrocious.
Yeah, I figured it would have been higher than that.
I figured it would have been lower than that because people really associate it with it being so dark and or not as fun and lighthearted.
Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Former scientist Galen Erso lives on a farm with his wife and young daughter Jyn. His peaceful existence comes crashing down when the evil Orson Krennic takes him away from his beloved family. Many years later, Galen becomes the Empire's lead engineer for the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, the Death Star. Knowing that her father holds the key to its destruction, Jyn joins forces with a spy and other resistance fighters to steal the space station's plans for the Rebel Alliance. Came out December 16th, 2016, directed by Gareth Edwards. Made a billy at the box office.
Yeah.
This made $1 billion. 1.058 billion, which I'd forgotten about, but this was a monster.
It's so uniquely itself and yet just tied to the Star Wars lore enough. It's kind of the weird part is like, yeah, it's a prequel, but it's still an original story told with Star Wars lore. It's not too distant, but it's just distant enough. I'll tell you, there's so much going on in this. To be fair, like one of the lead characters, Cassian, I mean, this movie was one of the few reasons I even cared about watching Andor when it came out, because Cassian was the main character. It's got comedy. Several of the characters are just cracking jokes all the time. K2, the Imperial robot or whatever, is just...
Alan?
Is just full of comedy through the whole thing. And just recently we had, May the 4th, and I sat down with my kids and we watched this movie. Like, Disney Plus, you've got all of those movies sitting right in front of you, and this is the one we picked. And we watched it all the way through, and it's like the story, the incredible idea of like that there's a weakness that was built into the Death Star and we got to steal these plans, and things are collapsing around them. Like, it's a great plan, but it's not working out. And it's like, try not to spoil anything for anyone if you haven't seen it. But I think one of my favorite things about a prequel is when there's stakes and when there's lives lost and when it's like, it's sacrificial. There's no hope of getting out of this. It's the sacrifice made for the greater good. Like, that's...
Yeah, and I think that's a theme we're going to come back to on prequels in particular. And I don't think I noticed it before I started studying for this. But you're right. There is something about prequels that they tend to go deeper. They tend to have biblical type deep themes attached to them. You're right. There's something about, that these people are all doomed.
Yes.
And without them, the original Star Wars movies don't happen. Star Wars happens because these people sacrifice themselves on this mission. At first, I think I thought, they're introducing too many characters. Why are they doing this? But by the time you get halfway through the movie, you're kind of shocked about how much you care about all the characters and how quickly you care about them.
So much.
Like, they're kind of wonderful. This movie features the best. Yeah, I think so. The best Darth Vader scene in cinema history.
Like, it's hard to top it. Like, it might be the best.
In retrospect, when you go back and watch episode 4, which I've done recently with my children,
Why is he so lame?
It makes episode 4 Darth Vader, it's specifically the lightsaber battle with Obi-Wan, very kind of lameish.
Yeah, it does.
It hurts. It hurts it a little bit because of how awesome he is in this little bit at the end of this movie. But yeah, this movie's great. Cody, what did you think? Did you like this movie when it came out?
I loved Rogue One.
It might be the best thing Star Wars has done after the original trilogy, right?
It's up there for sure. It's in my top 2 post original trilogy, and it balances seriousness with humor. It has emotional stakes. It hits all the beats. And if anything, I think Star Wars should have learned from this. It's okay to have like moments of some of the familiar faces, but you don't want the familiar faces hanging around too much. Introduce some new people. Make me fall in love with them. The story they tried to tell with the new people in the new trilogy, I'm like, I don't care because you have too much Han in the first one, and then you have too much Princess Leia and Luke in the second. And then the third one was just a colossal wreck.
Yeah, Rogue One's great. That's a good selection.
Bravo.
So good.
Bravo.
Cody, your first pick in the prequel pop culture draft.
My wife will be happy with this pick.
Okay, I sense you're about to take one of my picks.
Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yep, you did. I was going to pick this next if it was still on the table.
Huzzah!
Go ahead. Tell me. Well, wait.
I'm waiting for your blurb.
I should do the blurb. Will Rodman, a scientist in San Francisco, is experimenting with a drug that he hopes will cure his father's Alzheimer's disease, played by John Lithgow.
Yes.
After his work is deemed a failure, Will becomes the guardian of Caesar, an infant chimp who is exposed in utero to Will's drug. Caesar displays unusual intelligence, and Will decides to continue his experiments secretly. But as Caesar's intellect and abilities grow, he comes to represent a threat to man's dominion over Earth. 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. This came out August 5th, 2011. Directed by Rupert Wyatt. Made $481 million at the box office. James Franco, Tom Felton, Andy Serkis, John Lithgow, all in this movie. Cody,
Brian Cox.
The Brian Cox. Cody,
Cox.
tell me why it's your pick.
Because I was familiar with the Planet of the Apes movies from long ago. You got yourself some Chuck Heston.
Yeah, I loved him too. Saturday afternoon, you could find him on network television somewhere.
Yep.
I liked him as Ben-Hur.
Dynamite drop in. I see those broadcasting classes are paying off.
But I thought this was a great introduction to how we get to a planet that is overrun by apes, and humans are inferior species that are fending for themselves, trying to keep the species going, versus what we have in reality, which is like, oh, humanity's killing everything left and right, intentionally or unintentionally. This movie does a good job explaining that and exploring what it would look like in those early stages. And it makes you have empathy towards the apes, I feel.
Yep.
The acting in it was really good. I mean, hindsight being 2020, we probably don't want James Franco in it now, but he did a good job. And it also helps Andy Serkis stay around and relevant. And now he's just doing everything under the sun. And I'm here for more Andy Serkis.
Yeah. Justin, do you like those movies?
I was okay with them. I think, like in my mind, from seeing seeing at least the original Planet of the Apes, like on TV at some point. Dang you, all the heck. Seeing that, it's like I knew, it's building and I know where it's going. I think it just kind of all freaked me out, man. Like, I'm like, we're not getting out of this. Like, the apes are going to start like hurting people and taking them down. Like, I don't know. Something about it was so weird for me.
Okay, as far as apocalyptic movies go, it is kind of frightening.
Yeah.
Because
It just takes the wrong experiment.
It is the opposite of the original Planet of the Apes movies, where the originals, you get plopped down into the post-apocalyptic, far post-apocalyptic.
Yes.
I mean, apes have been in control of their planet. You don't even find out that it's Earth until the very end. Of course, the scene Justin references with the famous scene with Charlton Heston and the buried Statue of Liberty with just the head poking up. And he's like, you darn dirty apes. What have you done? You know, and this movie answers the question. Well, they didn't do it at all. It was humanity.
Yep.
And this movie, what's crazy about this movie is I was super cynical about this movie when I knew when it was coming out.
Me too.
And by all accounts, it shouldn't be good.
No, it shouldn't.
The original ape movies, as I said, they start with the premise of the apes having taken over. So making a movie where the whole thing keeps human-like apes on the sidelines, that was the whole crazy sci-fi-ish part of the Chuck Heston stuff was, oh, they're upright talking apes. Nice. So the whole idea of keeping that on the sidelines for a prequel that was also trying to reboot the series is a sort of like it's really brave call. And I'm just impressed that Hollywood made the call.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can't imagine this movie getting made today like it was.
Yeah,
and there's some deeper themes, especially starting in this movie, but playing out in the next couple that like the reverence that they have for Caesar and like almost religious worship of that. And like the apes that are like, we need to be peaceful. And then the ones that are like, we need to go to war. And it's like, oh, this is humanity all over again.
Well, and that's the best part as the series goes on. Because all these movies up to the one I have not seen the most recent one yet, which I plan to.
Me too.
But I've liked them all. I think they're all good. I love them. But that's the theme is, oh, yeah, they're running the same course as humanity. You know what the best part about this movie is? 105 minutes. You hear me, Hollywood? You can make a meaningful and deep story with action pieces that takes less than 2 hours.
And this movie costs like $83 million to make. Guess what?
What?
The CGI looks good.
It does.
Marvel quit spending $200+ million on garbage.
All right. It is time for my second pick. I'm going to go into the world of literature.
Oh, don't you dare.
Oh, I am. I am selecting as my number 2 prequel in the prequel draft, Wicked, the life,
Son of a gun.
the life and times of the Wicked Witch of the West, written by Gregory Maguire. He kind of did this thing where he was writing books based on villains from like fairy tale-ish type stories. This has a wonderfully deep question at the heart of it. First of all, did you guys read the book? Most people are aware of the musical.
I've
made
seen the
after it.
musical on Broadway. That is my experience.
Aware of the musical, I'd love to see it someday if there was like a rendition somewhere. But no, I was not aware of the book.
Yeah, it's traveling around still. I saw the second wave cast. It wasn't the cast with Chenoweth and
I saw Chenoweth,
the lady from Frozen.
Nice.
and Dina.
However John Travolta says her name. But it was amazing. It's one of the most incredible things I've seen. But I didn't pick the musical because this came first. And I thought when I read this book, it was brilliant because it has this wonderfully deep question at the heart of it. You take an iconic villain from an old story and you ask, were they born evil? Or was it circumstance that made them evil? Or did we misunderstand them the whole way and maybe they're not evil at all? And I love that question because, again, that's a biblical question. That's a deep theme of like, is good and evil really a thing? Or is it just variations of brokenness? But what's the old philosopher question there? Is it you're either Locke or who was the other philosopher that was the opposite side? So you're either born with a clean slate and then the world messes you up. It's nature versus nurture.
Yeah. There you go.
Gregory Maguire, the author, does this wonderful job of not changing anything with the original Wizard of Oz story while making it a wildly more complex world. So if you're not aware, and I don't know how many people could not be aware, Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West is a novel published in 1995, written by Gregory Maguire. It's the first in the Wicked Years series, although I think the books he writes after this aren't as good as this first original one. It's an exploration of the characters and setting of the 1900 novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. It's presented as kind of a biography of the Wicked Witch of the West, who's given the name Elphaba in this story.
It's a mouthful.
Which was new. It follows her from birth, her radicalization, social ostracism, and finally her death at the hands of Dorothy Gale that we're all very familiar with.
Team Dorothy.
Team Dorothy.
I just love stories like this that make us consider the nature of good and evil. They make us consider whether it was ever actually a true lens to look through, or whether people are just different levels of broken. I kind of dig stories like that. And it makes for a good prequel in a way that it takes like The Wizard of Oz isn't super deep or complex. It's a children's story.
Oh, whoa. This is about government, buddy.
Yeah. I know it's an allegory, but the story itself is not deep or complex. Kids love Wizard of Oz.
Kids love complex things, Dave.
All right. My point is the story of the Wizard of Oz itself doesn't bog you down with a lot of details and complexities. It's good and evil. Does Dorothy get home or not? And it's fantastical. The thing about this that's brilliant from a prequel sense is you can go in and you can really dig into the complexity of characters who heretofore had no complexity. The Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz is a evil cardboard cutout. You had to be a pretty deep kid to be the kid that was like, are we just going to sit here and not talk about how the Munchkins murdered the Wicked Witch? Dorothy murdered her sister. And the Munchkins all danced around like it was a celebration.
They did.
Her legs were sticking out from the house. Anyway, that's my pick. Wicked.
Lollipop Guild.
So I'm not going to lie. It was between Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Wicked for what I went with first. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of glad you chose it because you had a lot more background on the original story, because I would have just went with, I watched it on Broadway.
The musical's great, but it is different. Like the book's pretty dark.
Doesn't have Kristen Chenoweth singing.
No, it loses all that. So the musical obviously has a lot of charm that the book does not and doesn't try to.
Is there a movie that's coming out soon?
There is.
I thought I saw Ariana Grande.
The trailer just dropped, and as a fan of the musical, I was not sure about Ariana Grande, but I gotta say, the trailer's promising, and she looks great. She sounds great.
She can actually sing. So
and it's like she's channeling Kristen Chenoweth, which is good. Because I think lovers of the musical were not going to go with you could have a totally different version of Idina Menzel's Elphaba and get away with it. I don't think that was going to happen for Chenoweth's Glinda.
Nope.
So, yeah. All right, Cody.
It's Justin.
Justin?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I'm not
you're
going to Jeff you.
Oh.
You could have just gone with that and just usurped me. Man.
Justin, pick number 2.
Okay, I think I'm going to follow your lead and stick with literature. And I'm going with The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey.
Now, hold on. Which is written first? Is it technically a prequel, or is Lord of the Rings a sequel? I need a clarification.
Oh.
I mean, I see what you're saying.
Otherwise, you're going to have to go with the movie, The Hobbit. And
I'm totally going with the movie.
Wait, you're going with the movies?
Yeah.
Well,
dude, that's like what we're reviewing. I'm not going for. I know the books. The books came first.
Okay, The Hobbit was written September 21st, 1937. When is The Lord of the Rings written? Between 1937 and 1949. So The Hobbit comes out first. So are you going with the movies?
To be fair, I never read the book.
Sorry. So he has to go for the movie.
Okay, this is interesting, though. So you have not read the book.
No, sir, I have not.
And so you enjoyed the Hobbit trilogy by Peter Jackson.
So here, I'll lay it out for you.
Tell me about it.
I think it's a personal thing. My brother and I were actually spending time with some friends back in, way back in the day. I'm trying to think of what year that would have been. Basically, the first Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, was coming out in theaters. We were spending time with them, and they were getting ready to go to the movie theater, and they had their parents call our parents to see if it would be all right if we went with them to the theater to see this movie. They told us it was The Lord of the Rings. We had no clue what we were talking about. Like, we're not big readers, man. I'm sorry. Like, we're not big readers. When I say that, like, I mean it. Like, okay, so I apologize.
No, this is great. I'm fascinated by your angle here.
So my angle is that I had no clue what this movie was. I'm literally going to see a Lord of the Rings movie, which probably, like, they had read all the books. They knew.
Wait, have you seen the Lord of the Rings movies when you see the Hobbits?
Yeah, I'd seen.
Okay, so you're a fan of the movies.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So I'd seen the Lord of the Rings movies, even had like a full day where we watched all extended versions in one day. That was brutal.
Yeah.
That is brutal.
You need some food to help you do that.
So I don't think that's super rare. I think a lot of people are fan of the movies.
So I had never seen those movies, and we sat down in the movie theater, and when that movie started, it only took like 15 minutes for me to be just absolutely enthralled.
Okay.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I didn't even know it. And when the movie got over, you know how they walk over the hill in the first one, and you're just like, oh, that can't be all there is. Like, are you kidding me right now? And they're like, that's just the first movie. Like, that's just the first book. Like, there's tons more. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know anything about this story. This is new and like invigorating to me. And then, like, I knew of The Hobbit. I've talked to multiple people who have read The Hobbit. All of them have differing, thoughts on it. There's a lot of, poetry and singing of songs and stuff in there and everything. And they all loved it. They all were excited to see the movie. I was excited to jump into another story that I didn't know.
So yeah, you have no idea.
No.
Yeah.
So I'm excited just like I was when I didn't know what Lord of the Rings was. Now I can finally find out what that was all about. And the prequel, like, I am a sucker for a prequel. The fact that I was going to learn about things that I didn't know about yet was everything to me. Like, even just that moment where he's like, goodbye, I'm going on an adventure. I'm just like, oh my goodness, it's happening again. Like, I was so excited. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. Like,
also, side note, was there anything more magical? Was there any more magical theater experiences than those Lord of the Rings movies coming out each year for 3 years?
It was phenomenal.
It was great. It was the best of times.
It was. It really was. That was like the best era of movie theater.
Soon to be the worst of times.
No, I mean, now I know there was a lot of kind of like beef with like, I think a lot of people didn't really like the Desolation of Smog or like, Battle of Five Armies. There was a lot of stuff in there that people were, grumpy about when they made the movies. But something about that, An Unexpected Adventure. I even named a lock-in after it. Like when I was a youth pastor, I was like, "It's coming in. You don't know what we're doing tonight. Let's go. It's gonna be amazing."
Hey, I'm fascinated by that. I don't think I've known anybody that went into those movies, like, especially after Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit movies in particular, saying, I have no idea what this story's about. So that's actually kind of fascinating.
There was just so much talk of like, a Bilbo and Sting and
the wrestler?
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But just things like that where it's like, I loved those things in the movies, but I didn't know where they came from or what they were. And it's like, so for me to discover a whole nother world that led back into that was excitement all over again for me. So it's like, I don't really think it's one of the most popular, that you could probably pick, but I loved that first one. I thought it was really
It's
great.
totally understandable from your viewpoint, though.
Yeah.
I get that. Cody?
So I had read The Hobbit before watching The Hobbit, but I did enjoy The Hobbit. So the first
The Unexpected Journey?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Each movie after that just got progressively a little bit worse. And I'm like, we probably could have either done this in 2 movies and just called it good.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and make your second pick? It's time.
This is going to sound weird.
I doubt it. Just go with it.
Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh.
I went video game.
You went video game.
Yes,
okay.
you did.
Now I'm really intrigued. Tell me about Red Dead Redemption 2.
By the title, you think it's a sequel, but it's actually a prequel.
I had no idea.
And
I've played that game.
That game actually looks pretty awesome.
It is a younger version of John Marston from the original Red Dead. And
is he a ancestor of James Marsden?
Marston.
Oh, okay.
Not Din.
I didn't know.
It's a really fun game, and you get to get the backstory of how this guy becomes a big outlaw. He is in Red Dead 1. It's almost kind of open worldy. You get to go everywhere. You got some quests you actually have to do, but I usually do ridiculous things and like get killed and then have to redo it again.
Dude, it looks fun though.
I helped the preacher once.
Cody, is it one of the best video games ever? I feel like it's in the conversation.
So there is a definite population of video gamers that would say so.
It's
not
fantastic. It's not my kind of game. Those big Grand Theft Auto open world type games are not my thing, but I actually really liked that game.
So it's not my all-time favorite, but it is in probably my top 5. So if you say, yeah, this is the best video game ever, I'm not going to give you too much pushback. I'm a Skyrim guy, but this game is a fun game to play. And so if you are a fan of video games and of prequels, play Red Dead 2. Okay. You're welcome.
That's a good pick. It's a surprising pick, but it's a welcome pick. Yeah. And I feel like we might have some people that echo that. I didn't know it was a prequel.
It is really cool, like the open world concept of it, and kind of like how it's, do I dare say, like old timey? It's Wild West. It looks a little gory, a little bloody, but yeah, I mean, like, I'm sure there's all kinds of things you can do there because it's almost, it's an open world thing like Grand Theft Auto, but
made by the same people, Rockstar Video Games.
Totally different, like you're not grabbing a car, you're grabbing a horse,
Yeah.
It broke several records and had the second biggest launch in the history of entertainment, generating 725 million sales from its opening weekend and exceeding the lifetime sales of Red Dead Redemption in 2 weeks.
Awesome. All right. It's a good pick.
I'm about to check that out.
Good pick. I'm surprised you've never played it. You're a gamer guy.
I am. I think my thing is like I was saying earlier, I had to like offload stuff off my Xbox so I could onload other stuff. Gosh,
that's the thing with the Xbox. They give you just a small amount of memory and everything takes up like a gigabyte.
Is that still the deal? Has that not improved?
I think.
You can play from the cloud, but at times you'll get kicked off and that's not fun.
No, that's not fun.
All right. Third pick. It's time for the third round. I'm taking a movie with this pick. This was a movie I went to the theater. It's funny how some of our best theater experiences come from not expecting much, low expectations, and then you see it and you're like pleasantly surprised. Once per freaking episode. It's like clockwork. Are we living in New York City?
No.
This is Gotham.
Yeah. I mean, we are pretty close to the police station.
So I went to this movie not expecting much. I would not say I'm a huge fan of the original source material. I watched it when I was a kid.
So we're not going with what I thought you were going with.
No, and it's a movie that came out last year. Last year was a good year for prequels. There was a couple of them. And this one, I recently rewatched it after my theater experience with my kids who enjoyed it. And I thought this holds sometimes when you're not expecting much, you go to the theater and you go, that was a pleasant movie-going experience. Then you see it again and you're like, I see the warts this time. That didn't happen. I enjoyed it just as much the second time. I'm talking about Wonka.
Good.
This is the second time I've picked Wonka in a pop culture draft. That might be the first time that's ever happened.
I think so.
82% on Rotten Tomatoes. Armed with nothing but a hat full of dreams, young chocolatier Willy Wonka manages to change the world one delectable bite at a time. Came out last year, December 15th, 2023, directed by Paul King. Cost $125 million to make, made $632 million. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of cheddar.
Made $632 million. Let me tell you a little bit about why I'm a fan. I really didn't think this movie would succeed when I knew they were making it, especially if I'd have known it was a musical. Musicals have been underperforming lately too. Into the Heights, West Side Story remake, they've been really underperforming. And so what I want to say is the marketing for this movie was genius. It was really good. They actually hid that it was a musical. And by the time most people found out, they were in the theater watching it. And that was my experience. And when they started singing, I immediately thought, oh no, this is a musical? I'm not going to like this. And then 2 hours later, it had completely won me over. It's not a perfect movie, but it's just so stinking charming. A lot of that the credit should go to Timothée Chalamet. He's very good.
He is very good.
He's kind of killing it right now.
Yeah, and a lot of that charm comes from him. But this prequel in particular presents one of my favorite tropes, the heart of gold. Wonka is a Christ-like figure. He has his own agenda, but it's always overruled by helping someone else. Constantly in that movie, he puts his own dreams and his own agenda to the side to help other people, and it's actually quite beautiful. I was overcome with emotion in the first scene of this stinking movie where he comes to Paris to start his chocolate factory or whatever, and he's only got like 12 coins or whatever, and he starts giving them away immediately to the less fortunate until he doesn't have anything. And I just love that. Cody, you're making a cynical face.
I probably should not have watched it any time within like 6 months of you talking about it because she hyped it up. And then I watched it with my wife who loves musicals, loves the original. And we're watching it and it's dragging and it's dragging. And then, like, the last 10 minutes, like, there's some serious story that, like, gets wrapped up. And, like, oh, that was a very impactful moment. They could have cut out about 30 minutes. And it might have been a perfect movie.
Maybe. I wouldn't argue with that. Like I said, it's not perfect. I'll say that. And maybe the theater experience magnifies the feeling, especially when you're not expecting. It was a date night, which my wife and I rarely get when you have 4 kids. Those are harder to come by. And I was feeling romantic.
Atta guy.
And yeah, it was a romantic kind of feeling with the movie. And so maybe it just hits me in the perfect spot. I wouldn't argue against that.
But Timothée Chalamet is talented.
We'll let the listeners decide when they vote for who drafts the best team. But that's my third pick.
Say, to be honest with you, that's one I still haven't seen yet. Shout out, friend of the podcast, Everett Robert. Hey, man, the password on HBO Max is not working. I've been trying to watch it. Come on, bro. For some reason, it's not working. I don't know what's going on. But
that was awesome.
This is one of those movies where I saw it and I said, do we need that? Because, there was kind of like, you got Willy Wonka, you've got Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's like, feels like we kind of filled in some gaps that were there. And so I asked my kids, because my kids have actually got to see it. I think the school, like, took them to go see it or something. Yeah. And I was like, come on, just be real with me. Is this movie worth it? And they're like, it's really good. And I was like, man, now I want to watch it. Like,
for what it's worth, I was the same way. I was like, do we really need that?
Yeah.
Do we need a Wonka prequel?
So he rearranged the hierarchy for me.
Oh, like The Rock wanted to.
Yeah. Now, Timothy didn't change number 1, but he changed number 2. Johnny Depp got booted to number 3.
No, that holds up. Yeah.
Gene
Wilder's still number 1.
Gene Wilder.
Still Gene guy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This is a different kind of movie and a different Wonka.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I will say this. The versions of Wonka stories that have been done present 3 very different Wonkas.
Oh, and the Johnny Depp one was very different.
Yeah, well, I would even call it... I'm so loath to call it Johnny Depp's version and not Tim Burton. Because I have such disdain for what Tim Burton does to properties that already exist, including Batman, which I'm not a huge fan of. I just the whole gothic vibe he brings to these existing properties, I just don't like it.
You either like Timmy or you don't.
Maybe, yeah.
He's got that style.
Justin, third pick.
I think I'm gonna go back to Disney. There's this movie that was a huge hit with Pixar, and then they decided to put out a prequel.
Oh, I know what you're going with.
I think I know where you're going.
Monsters University.
Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't where I thought you were going.
Monsters University. A lot of people have this on their list of best prequels.
This was one of those movies where I looked at it, and I was kind of like, do we need it? Like, it was kind of what...
Disney doesn't listen to those questions.
They don't. I mean, we should know that by now. But there's something about this movie that's so lighthearted. It's so, man, I don't know. It just kind of hits all the right spots when you're trying to, see like, where Mike and Sully came from. I mean, John Goodman, Billy Crystal, you've got John Krasinski's in this one. They also put Charlie Day in it. And of course, you've got Steve Buscemi. I mean, it's star-studded. It's hilarious. And it's just, again, this one is one of those where it's like, man, I was longing to find out where like these guys came from. Like, why is Monsters Inc. even a place to work? Like, why do they even care?
There was a lot of things I expected to hear tonight. One of them was not you saying, I long to know where the monsters from Monsters, Inc. came from. Let me give you the blurb. 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. Ever since he was a kid monster, Mike Wazowski, played by Billy Crystal, has dreamed of becoming a scarer. To make his dream a reality, he enrolls at Monsters University. During his first semester, he meets Sully, played by John Goodman, a natural-born scarer. Sully and Mike engage in a fierce rivalry that ultimately gets them both kicked out of MU's elite scare program. To make things right, Mike and Sully, along with a bunch of misfit monsters, will have to learn to work together. Came out in 2013. This was a monster hit, made $743 million. Yeah.
It's my first one not to hit a bill.
All right, Cody, pick, or do you have thoughts on that, or do you want to just go right to pick number 3?
That's a good pick. Solid.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
I nearly tried to pigeonhole one, but it I think would fit more as in the same time frame, so I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. I want to go with something that you and I both liked, something we talked about on the podcast.
I think I know what you're picking.
And I'm going to have to apologize to my friend Taylor Sheridan, who I gave all the beef to last week. 1883.
There you go.
Great series, a prequel to the Yellowstone dynasty. Dave, do you want to give the blurb?
I would love to. 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. A prequel to Yellowstone, 1883, follows the Dutton family as they flee poverty in Texas and embark on a journey through the Great Plains to seek a better future in Montana. Real-life couple Tim McGraw and Faith Hill star as James and Margaret Dutton, while Sam Elliott, the great Sam Elliott, portrays Shea Brennan, a tough cowboy who has sadness in his past. Other cast members include Isabel May, LaMonica Garrett, and Don Olivieri. Billy Bob Thornton guest stars, and Tom Hanks makes a great cameo as in a Civil War flashback scene. Created by Taylor Sheridan, it aired on Paramount Plus and critically acclaimed. People seem to like it.
And Rita Wilson was in an episode.
That's right. This is a fantastic show, and we have I think it was our second episode ever of this podcast where we talk about 1883. Am I right? Am I remembering that right?
It sounds right.
Maybe.
So if you liked 1883 and you're a newer listener, I would invite you to go back, scroll back through the episodes, go back and listen to our episode on 1883 because we had a lot of flowers to give it.
I feel like we should have done a watch along on it.
Well, we didn't do watch alongs.
I know, but we should have.
But we could have. I mean, I guess we could go back and do it now.
We could.
I just don't know if it would be that popular because it's, been long enough.
Yellowstone has died off.
How good was Sam Elliott in this show?
Oh, dude.
Oh, all the emotions, especially at the end.
He was
so good.
He was honestly one of those guys where I was like, no other guy would have been there but that guy.
No. I mean, I can't. There's no other actor that can play that role like him.
He brings about this rugged, manly persona, and he has these emotional beats throughout the series where he's vulnerable, and you really feel it because this isn't what he wants to do. This isn't who he wants to be, but this is where he is at this moment because he has gone through some serious stuff.
We may have to have a discussion at some point. We had a lot of things to say about Taylor Sheridan last week.
Yes.
Good and bad.
When he's good, he's good.
But is he someone that can draw performances out of maybe places you wouldn't think? Because other than Sam Elliott, this cast, I mean, when you heard who was in it before, you're not exactly thinking it's a home run to have Tim McGraw and Faith Hill be like kind of the headliners. Isabel May, who I thought was wonderful in this show, I thought she was just a newcomer. I was wrong. I didn't know she was on like one of those goofy Disney sitcoms. I only know that because my kids love it. And I was like, oh, so she did this before 1883, which isn't a glowing endorsement of her acting ability.
No.
Those Disney sitcoms, no offense, but those Disney sitcoms are kind of silly and goofy. But she's amazing in this show.
She is. Wasn't she supposed to be in something Marvel related? Then they axed it.
Oh, I don't know. I don't
Or
remember.
was it DC? It was one of the two. She was supposed to be in a huge project, and then it got axed.
I suppose her future will kind of answer the question of just how good is Taylor Sheridan at getting these performances out of people. Because, like, I saw this and I thought, oh, she's going to be a star.
Oh, yeah. Tim McGraw did a phenomenal job. Like, he's been in things, but he's usually been a supporting actor, not having to carry the brunt of anything, and he chews up some scenery in this. Faith Hill does way better than I thought Faith Hill would do. And
She's good.
LaMonica Garrett, he was phenomenal in this. You get to see Chet Hankstad, because that's how I'm going to refer to him. Get to see him for like a couple minutes at most in this series. And
That scene was amazing.
and the scene literally, like, it's ingrained in my brain.
Yeah.
And so maybe you're right. Maybe Taylor Sheridan, when he is good, he is getting the most out of the talent he has in from unlikely areas.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely go back and listen to our episode if you're a recent listener and a binger of all things pop culture pastor, because we have a lot more to say about that show. But one thing I will say we talk a lot about in that episode was the historical qualities of 1883. The problem with the Western over the years has been it's not been really historic, even close to historically accurate as it's been depicted from Hollywood. And 1883, I think, is one of the most historically accurate depictions of the Old West, as I have read about it, that you can see, and you'll have to go back and listen to the pod for all my thoughts on that.
Have you guys ever watched shows like that and gone, yeah, that's the reason I wasn't born during that time?
Definitely. Yeah. I don't know how I would have lived.
No.
I need air conditioning.
Getting
y'all.
off the train was bad enough.
The worst thing about that whole show and what I gather from the Old West is, well, we're leaving in a wagon train. Half of us will not reach our destination.
Yeah.
Imagine getting on a plane and hearing that.
I mean, come on.
This is how the seatbelt works. And by the way, only half of us will be arriving in our destination. Good luck.
Yeah.
That's wild that people did that. Like, it just blows my mind. It's time for our worst prequel picks. And man, I'm going to have to overrule you in one of your picks, Justin.
Dang.
I don't know if this has ever happened before.
Okay.
I'm selecting the entire Hobbit trilogy as my worst prequels ever.
I mean, a billion
If I
says
have to-
otherwise.
A billion does say otherwise.
I don't know.
Capitalist Cody will defend
Capitalist
you.
Cody will defend this, sure.
This
And
is one of those moments where I'm really thankful for Cody. You know?
they undoubtedly make money. But I'll say this. The reason I hate Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy, the first movie's okay. Even the things they add in the first movie that aren't actually in the story, I'm kind of okay with. It's the fact that there's 3 movies. They add in all these things to the original story to fill out 3 movies worth of things. And it becomes a sprawling epic like the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah.
And my point I want to make here, and it'll be a very short point, is the best part about The Hobbit, as written by J.R.R. Tolkien, in comparison to The Lord of the Rings, is it's a smaller story. It's not epic, and it's charming. And you lose that charm when you turn it into this sprawling epic. Now, from your point of view, Justin, I can totally see why, if you haven't read the books, like, man, you could be all about that. And again, it's very subjective. I'm okay with that. But for me, I read The Hobbit first before I read The Lord of the Rings. In fact, The Hobbit's one of the first real books I actually read. I think I read it around 10 or 11. Every time I went to my grandmother's house, she had the Ralph Bakshi cartoon of The Hobbit on VHS.
I think I've seen that. Yeah.
And I would watch it every time I went over there. I loved the story, and maybe that's why it has this charm for me as well. And that charm is just completely sucked out of the trilogy that Peter Jackson makes by the end of the third movie, because it's turned into this sprawling epic. And I just don't feel like it's supposed to feel that way, because that's not the way I feel like The Hobbit felt to me. It's a smaller story. Like, to me, making The Hobbit a sprawling epic takes away from The Lord of the Rings being a sprawling epic.
Yeah.
The Hobbit is what creates the sprawling epic.
Yeah.
I honestly think that if you wanted to make it a cash cow, make it 2 movies.
I mean, is this kind of what we originally started talking about at Cannes? Like, he gets a standing ovation for like 7 minutes, and he's like, "I'm gonna make 3 more."
In all honesty, if you're of my opinion, it's hard to say who's the culprit here, because probably my suspicion is that it's Hollywood. That Hollywood, the studio says, "Hey, how would you like to make 3 more of those movies?" And Peter Jackson probably, because Peter Jackson loved the books.
Yep.
And so maybe Peter Jackson and he's never admitted this as far as my knowledge goes, but maybe Peter Jackson says, "Well, I mean, I don't know if you could make 3 movies," and Hollywood's like, "Just make them. We'll give you $1 billion." And he was like, "Okay, I'll do it." So, yeah, that's my worst. The Peter Jackson Hobbit trilogy, not a fan. Justin, what's your worst prequel?
One of my favorite movies of all time is Dumb and Dumber.
It's happening.
Here we go.
Say, one of the worst prequels in human existence is Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, man.
I mean, my goodness, you guys, full of actors no one gives a dang about. Rotten Tomatoes 10%. It was horrible.
When Harry Met Lloyd.
Yeah.
That's the full title.
Horrible.
Oh, man. Listen to this. 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. Maybe the most deserved Rotten Tomatoes score of all time. There'll be no arguing over this one.
No.
This is a legit pick.
It's terrible.
Here's the blurb. After years of homeschooling, full stop. The homeschool slander.
Yeah.
What in the like some of the never mind. I'm not going to go there. I'm just saying there's some. I know a lot of homeschooled kids and they're smart. After years of homeschooling, dim bulb teen Harry Dunn, played by Derek Richardson, who's that?
No clue.
Finally makes the leap to public school and meets the equally intellectually challenged Lloyd Christmas, played by Eric Christian Olsen, who I do know. He's a good he's a good side character in a lot of movies.
Yeah.
He was in this one.
This was a movie.
This was him.
The duo land in a, quote, special needs class. I don't know if this one holds up.
It's brutal.
Created by Principal Collins, who's played by Eugene Levy, in order to bilk money from parents to fund his condo in Waikiki. His corruption is discovered by Jessica, played by Rachel Nichols, a fellow student who asks Harry and Lloyd to help her prove Collins' guilt. Came out in 2003, directed by Troy Miller, made $39 million at the box office. This is a total bomb.
It is.
Absolute, utter, total bomb. To my knowledge, I've only seen it the one time.
I've only seen it one time as well. But that's how, like, I just remembered it, like, being that bad. Like, them slamming into each other, and that's, like, how Lloyd broke his tooth.
Oh, man.
I don't know. It just seemed like the only thing that this movie said to me was, like, yeah, Jim Carrey is brilliant. Yeah. And you cannot fake.
Well, even Jeff Daniels.
Yeah.
I think as the years have passed, we understand how good Jeff Daniels was in Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And how much he sort of, if it's anyone else with Carey, that I don't know that it's as good, because he's brilliant. But yeah, I don't even think there's much discussion to be had about that one. That one that's obvious. Yes, that's a great
That
pick.
one is a trash movie.
This is like, don't even, like, if you haven't seen it, don't even think about it. It's horrible.
Cody, worst prequel. Your pick.
Oh, this one's going to be controversial because it actually was somewhat popular.
Okay.
But I'm going with a TV series.
All right.
And this is going to shock you. Gotham.
Why would that shock me?
I'm not shocked.
Because I'm a DC guy. And
oh, yeah, that's true.
This is trash.
Say,
yeah.
Like hot trash.
77% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It had a following, and I don't know how or why.
On the Fox network, James Gordon is a rising detective in the dangerously corrupt Gotham City, where his late father was a successful district attorney. Brave, honest, and determined to prove himself, Gordon must navigate the dirty politics of Gotham's justice system, as well as the rise of malevolent villains, including the Penguin, the Riddler, and Catwoman. The series also chronicles the life of young Bruce Wayne, who becomes an orphan when his billionaire parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne, are they were murdered? No way.
Spoiler!
Gordon becomes a friend to young Bruce as he finds his way toward becoming the iconic Caped Crusader. It did have a following. I remember that. It did have a very questionable version of the Joker, I think, for a lot of people.
Questionable version of the Joker. You went way too young with Batman. I don't need to follow Bruce as a child.
Yeah.
That's
agree with that.
silly.
What's your biggest problems with this? Because you are a DC and Batman guy.
I thought Ben McKenzie from the OC did a great job as James Gordon, and young James Gordon, up and coming. And if it had just chronicled him and maybe some of the lower level Gotham bosses, I might not have had such strong opinions. Also, Jada Pinkett Smith as Fish Mooney was awful.
Yeah, I didn't like that either. I was out.
And then they tried to make you care about random Falcones that aren't Carmine, and I'm like, no, stop it. Get this person off the screen. But too much focusing on young Bruce. Catwoman is basically the same age as Bruce, and like here she is being a mid to big boss level boss in Gotham as a child, and I'm like, no, stop it. Just stop it now. It was too ridiculous. I'm all about you exploring the Gotham underworld and having a Gotham series, but don't start with either Bruce right after his parents get killed. Either start while Thomas and Martha are still alive, or start when Batman's just up and coming and no one knows who Batman is.
Point of clarification. Bruce's parents die. That happened.
I thought he just fell down a well and there was bats.
Wow. I've never seen that in the pop culture world.
I'll tell you though, like I didn't even make it through the first season of that.
I didn't even try to watch it.
I would come back and would be like, well, people keep talking about it.
I am not naturally inclined to be a prequel guy, I think, because there are some of these I never even gave a chance.
Yeah.
This was one that I'm like, if it's done right. And then when they said, well, Bruce is like 13, I'm like, no, I don't need this.
Isn't the Joker like young too?
He's
like a teenager?
He's like an older teen, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Nope.
Like, I don't need kid villains. I don't need a kid trying to be a hero at random times, even though for most of it he's not.
It was almost like they tried to pull a Smallville, but then they didn't understand why Smallville was good.
And like, you focus on Bruce Wayne going to Gotham High. You don't focus on him
Right.
being around all
but he's got a history exam today and he's got to focus.
All right. This is a lightning round. The category is this, and I will give it a small explainer. Sometimes there are movies made where someone says, hey, let's make a prequel. And the person in the room who has any intelligence should be like, well, why? Because those movies weren't that good. Do they really deserve a prequel? And this is the category that we're now going to talk about and draft a spot for. It's prequels that have no right to be any good, and they somehow are. Okay? So it's kind of a convoluted thing, but prequels that were good, and they probably shouldn't have been because the source material may not be that great. I am going to go with, since I have the first pick, a movie that came out in 2018.
Oh, good.
Had no, like, this movie should not have been any good. I hate the movies that this is a prequel to. I'm talking about a movie called Bumblebee. 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a prequel to the Transformers series of movies by Michael Bay that are pretty much all trash. Here's the blurb. On the run in the year 1987, Bumblebee the Autobot seeks refuge in a junkyard in a small California beach town. Charlie, on the brink of turning 18 years old and trying to find her place in the world, she's played by Haley Steinfeld, soon discovers the battle-scarred and broken Bumblebee. When Charlie revives him, she quickly learns that this is no ordinary yellow Volkswagen. Made $468 million at the box office. Now, I'm going to say something right here, this being a lightning round. This is all I'm going to say, because if you know, you know. This is a good movie. If this had been the first movie adapted for the Transformers series, that whole series would have been better.
I will say Transformers Rise of the Beast, which is right after and takes place in the 90s. A lot better than at least the second and third Transformers movies. So I think you're correct.
Imagine a world where they lead off with Bumblebee. You get one Transformer, and then there's a couple bad ones, right, that show up in Bumblebee. It's been a while. But you don't get any of the big name Transformers until a sequel. You don't get Optimus Prime. You don't get all that until later on. Like, I think it would have been a much, much better way to do it. And that's my pick. Bumblebee, a prequel that shouldn't have been as good as it was, but it is.
Justin.
Okay, so let me just lay this out a little bit, because I don't think like the original like series of movies were trash. That's not why I'm picking it. I'm more so picking this movie just because I felt like, okay, like I guess I kind of felt like it was like a money grab. Like, it's just like, let's just make another one of these. Let's just, see how it does, just like all the other ones. I'm going with the Predator franchise. And specifically, I'm going with the movie Prey.
Another movie we reviewed on the pod.
I was actually in that one. I think that was one of my first pods I was ever on. And when I first saw this movie and that like Hulu was like advertising it, I was like, it looks neat, but it feels like they were just like, let's make another Predator movie, or let's make another like Predator versus Aliens, or like it just felt like another like, why not? Let's just throw it out there. But that movie was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was really good.
And it works good in a historical context where it's more of a hunting culture.
Yeah.
And so, it worked phenomenally.
It definitely fits too in this category because the original Predator is obviously a classic, and I think we probably all love that.
Yeah.
But the movies that followed were all junk. And this kind of brings it back to basics. And we talk about it. Again, go back and listen to the pod we did on Prey if you want to hear more about it. That's a good pick. Good pick. Cody?
Okay.
What shouldn't be good, but it is?
So there was a franchise of books that I loved. I loved the first one, I guess I should say. I watched the first movie, and it ruined me from wanting to read the second and third book. And the movies after the first one, and the first one was horrifically trash because I had read the book. Second, third, and they made a part 2 of the third. And Hunger Games, they were awful. I'm choosing the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbird and Snake. Yes. That movie, I had really low expectations going into it, and they hit the aspects that I wish that the first Hunger Games movie would have hit with the first Hunger Games book. The Hunger Games book, I think, the movie was trying to build off of like what Twilight had used as its success model to get the young teens and ladies and some gentlemen to watch, and it was trash. This was good storytelling. It had good acting. It had the survival aspect. It gave you an insight into Snow's mindset of right before he ascends into power. And so that was a very cool story to adapt. And I also wanted to know, like, how does Snow become this figure that's so vile and hated and leading these brutal games for 70 years or whatever? And so, no, I chose this one.
Yeah, this was the other movie from last year, 2023, in what might be the return of the prequel. Both of them end up making our lists in some fashion. I chose Wonka. You chose Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Came out in November. They came out back-to-back months, November and December. Made $337 million, starring Rachel Ziegler, Tom Blythe, Peter Dinklage, Jason Schwartzman. It's a great cast.
Viola Davis.
Yeah, wonderful. It's another one of those, much like Wonka, expected nothing out of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And
it was
left the
low.
theater thinking,
Yeah.
man, that was good. Mm-hmm. And we did an episode on this one.
We did.
And so, yeah, this has turned into, hey, if you want to hear us talk more about it, go back and listen to that old episode because it's worth it. This movie's great.
So 1883 wasn't episode number 2, but it was in the early first 40. So somewhere 40 and below, I think. I went back and watched or looked at our list.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
it's not, I thought we did that one pretty early. Okay.
It felt like it was
Just go
early.
back. There's
episode 20.
there is
1883.
there's an
in
episode
Westerns.
we talked about 1883. Just
Yeah,
go back and find
episode 20.
They all run together when they're this good. Honestly, this podcast is amazing. So, they all run together. All right, fellas. Good episode. Good draft. Now it's up to the listeners to decide who wins this pop culture draft and why is it me?
I feel like I took some brave
brutal.
choices
You-
on
you
mine.
did.
I think we all took. This was a harder category. It forced us to think a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see how this plays out.
The
in
Muppet Babies was nearly drafted.
And worst prequel. The new Muppet Babies or the old Muppet Babies?
The old Muppet Babies.
Old Muppet Babies is that's great. That would have been
Yeah.
a good one, dude.
It was on my first out.
Yeah.
I like
okay.
the Muppets.
All right. What do you guys think? Make sure and vote when we put up the social media post that will direct you to hit the emoji for the right vote to cast. And yeah, we're anxious to hear your thoughts. Did we leave out any? Did you agree? Did you disagree? Let us know. As always, thank you so much for listening. We love having a community of listeners that we get to be in the community with. That's what we're all about here. Until next time, we love you guys. We'll see you.
Pop culture master.